Hey, listen, it's story time. Please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, sharing with your friends. I'm authentic, I'm independent, and I'm here every day with the latest and greatest. And today's latest and greatest carries on probably one of the longest running inside jokes that we've had going on. This is story time from our autistic Belgian, Arkham Asylum 1505. That's his name, that's all I know what to call him, and I gotta be honest, I'm taking credit because he used to be different Arkham Asylums on different websites. Now he's Arkham Asylum 1505 because I mentioned it, brought it up, pointed it out, and his autistic brain had to do something about it. So, we had a live stream. Arkham Asylum mentioned this story briefly. He finally posted it. I said I was going to come back to it. I always had intentions of it, but I wanted to build up. And so I've been layering jokes in throughout our live streams to build lore in the channel. And finally, here, we're taking time out of the week. And I'm gonna tell you this story. It's in a few parts, so sit down, get yourself some hot cocoa or some milk, and enjoy the story. Part 1. The story is pretty long. I can't do a Belgian accent, so don't fucking expect it. I went on a trip to Hungary with one of these traveling agencies, along with a friend of mine who told me about these agencies, so it's because of him I discovered this way of traveling. There were 9 people who went on this trip, alongside the travel counselor and guide person. So the group consisted of 10 people overall. The first couple of days, everything went well, but then we visited a peninsula with a big lake. It was a sunny and pretty hot day, so we had the option to swim in the lake. Me, my friend, and a few other people decided to explore the area instead and search for a nice place where we could eat and have drinks. 2 people who went swimming were a man and a woman. When we returned, the mood felt off. The guy was keeping a distance from the rest of the group except for a couple of people, including me, my friend, and another quite introverted guy. We only learned this at the near end of the trip, but something happened between the woman and the man while they were at the lake, but we never learned what. We went to eat dinner one night in a wine cellar that was remodeled to be a restaurant. We occupied 2 tables in the back of the restaurant. My friend, me, the quiet guy, and the other guy who had an altercation with the woman sat at one table, and everyone else, including the travel counselor, sat at the table beside us. They were so loud we couldn't understand each other, and we had to ask them multiple times if they could be a little quieter because we couldn't hear each other and couldn't converse, but they didn't change their volume. They got even louder, with some of them sometimes screeching like large, overly excited parrots for some reason. There were people who were seated a couple of tables, I think there was one empty table between us, who were constantly throwing dirty looks at the noisy table, but they clearly didn't notice. Part 2. People from Hungary, do not like loud people or tourists. So neither does Japan. Trust me on that. So eventually they moved to the front of the restaurant. Our travel counselor never intervened to tell the screeching bird people to calm down and lower their volume, especially since they were annoying the other guests, and they were being so loud that they caused them to flee to save their eardrums, a luxury we didn't have. No, she joined in the how loud can we be screech fest, and since we were in a wine cellar, the noise was amplified, and I don't understand that the staff from the restaurant never intervened, but I think that's something they don't really do in Hungary, which will become clear later in the story. The counselor being terrible at managing the group, even though the counselors have to undergo training before they can become counselors and organize trips, will also play a part later in the story. Part 3. Afterwards, the mood was already tense, with everyone feeling the tension between Lake Man and Lake Woman, as well as another woman who liked to insert herself in the drama and meddle with the affairs of other people. Like asking you, why are you eating certain foods? Why you don't drink alcohol, as if it was some sign of a disease? Why you don't go swimming or be in the sand? She would constantly give alternatives how she would do things, and then one morning asked me if I didn't find her constant commentary and meddling annoying at such an early time. I answered her that no, it was always annoying, no matter what time of day it was, especially since I just wanted to eat in peace. But she didn't seem to register this and continued, but I ignored her advice, so eventually she gave up. But this lady also played a part in the Great Hungarian Row because she didn't like Lake Man, so she felt the need to insert herself in the conflict between Lake Man and Lake Woman. Lake Man kept himself to interacting with us, and we didn't have any problems with him or anyone else. We just wanted to explore the country and learn about its history and culture and have fun. But when the entire group was together, the atmosphere was tense, and Lake Man, Lake Woman, and the meddler would be subtly antagonizing each other, being passive-aggressive before not speaking for a long period of time. Now, Lake Woman, for some reason, found it necessary to interrupt my dinner by suddenly leaning on me and putting her hands on my shoulders. At first, I thought she lost her balance and just grabbed onto me to stabilize herself, but she kept her hands on my shoulders. I decided to ignore it and focus on my food, and when she didn't get any reaction, she stopped doing it. Man, I'm sorry, my Belgian friend, but she was that was your pass. Anyway, good, I thought, but she did it again later. I had no food to distract me this time, so I politely told her I didn't like being touched and asked her if she would please unhand me and respect my personal space. Yeah, I've had that happen before. But see, when I go on trips as a single man, I don't have personal space. If you start touching me, I'm happy to touch back. Anyway, Lakeman was. Oh, hold on. She did so, but she didn't talk to me for the rest of the trip. That's because you spurred her advances. Anyway, Lakeman was constantly whining about other people of the group, especially Lake Woman. We told him we just focused on the trip and country and not the other travelers. There was also another guy, who I'll call Romeo from now on, who clearly had the hots for Lake Woman, and she turned her attention to him after I told her I didn't like being touched. And then one night we went to have dinner in a restaurant. Everything exploded. Part 5. After we ate dinner, we ordered dessert and drinks. I had to go to the toilet to poop, so I left the table, which was a large oval table. I sat on one end, and my friend sat on my left. I went looking for the toilet, which was located outside and was hidden away behind some trees. I eventually found the toilet and did my business. Thank God, man. This took quite some time, at least 10 minutes. And when I was finished, I left the toilet, and I wanted to return to the corner. I met another member of the travel. And when I returned to the corner, I met another member of the travel group. I assumed he was looking for the toilet, so I started to explain where the toilet was. But he said he didn't have to go to the toilet, but that he was looking for me. And he asked me how I was doing. I found this an odd question, but I answered that I was doing fine. He said, "That's good, because a big row broke out when you were on the toilet." I already knew who was rowing, but I still dreaded returning to the table. As I got closer, I could hear shouting and banging. And as I entered the area where our table was located, I could see that there was a massive screaming match going on. Lake Woman and Lake Man were shouting at each other, and the meddler, of course, had to take part in the confrontation as well and comment on everything she didn't like about Lake Man. Romeo, meanwhile, felt like it was his duty to come to the defense of Lake Woman, to the point that Lake Woman snapped at him, telling him to shut up and that she could speak for herself and didn't need his assistance and constant interrupting. Yeah, Romeo missed it. That was it. He failed to have access with her at that point. It was Lake Guy versus the three others, with them accusing each other of being the one at fault for ruining the trip, acting offended when the others spoke ill of them, repeating multiple times that they weren't the problem, so the other person was the problem. It reminded me of that meme with the screaming lady who's pointing at a cat. All those people who were shouting were basically that lady. The rest of us just sat there in silence. Part 6. I was finishing my dessert and was constantly looking at my watch. The quiet, introverted person was shaking and on the verge of crying, clearly overwhelmed by everything. They were really loud and banging on the table. Meanwhile, the travel counselor just sat there and let them rage and make a scene, never trying to calm anyone down or reminding them we were in a public space. There were other people at the restaurant, and the staff was looking at our table in confusion, but they never intervened either. Then, after 15 minutes of this, the counselor finally mentioned that the people who wanted to leave could do so. It was my turn to pay, but my friend said he would pay because he wanted to keep watching the drama unfold. So I literally jumped out of my seat saying finally and got out of there real fast alongside the quiet, introverted guy who started crying. He later told me all the screaming and shouted, reminding him of things from his youth. Oh, God, that were unpleasant memories. That is really sad. That is no longer funny. That's really sad. I feel for him. The counselor never noticed he was having a breakdown while the screaming match was going on. The introverted guy was also very short and slender, so I think that made everything even more overwhelming for him. We went back to the hotel, which was a stationary boat on the river. The rest returned later. Apparently, the counselor talked to Lake Man and Lake Woman, but Lake Woman didn't want to talk to Lake Man, even with the counselor as a mediator. My friend and the guy who talked to me at the toilet also returned to our room, and apparently after I left, one of the women, I don't know who, asked my friend what my problem was and if I had issues. He said that I couldn't stand shouting in confrontational situations and that I had autism. I don't mind other people knowing, and he knows that. Then they just started fighting again, and apparently went on for another 20 minutes without any attempt from the counselor to stop it. Part 7. After that, we still had 4 days left, which we spent in Budapest. Just like Hawkeye and Black Widow. And honestly, I got to be honest, you and I remember Budapest very differently. Needless to say, the atmosphere was completely ruined. The people who had nothing to do with the conflict tried to make the best of the remainder of our stay, but we were always nervous that there would be another scene. Lake Man stopped interacting with most of the group, was constantly complaining to us that he was going home and how badly he was being treated. We said we were just trying to enjoy the rest of our trip as best as we could. And another thing that was weird was that the counselor apparently had an individual conversation with every member of the group to see how they viewed the group dynamic and if they had problems, but she never asked me anything. I didn't mind because I just wanted to not be bothered by all the drama, but I did find it odd that she asked everyone else, including my friend who had the same mindset as me. So I did find it odd that I was the only one who wasn't asked anything. Lakeman didn't go out with us anymore if the entire group was together, and he did his own thing. Or he stuck with us and the quiet guy who stayed with us as well because we had the same interests and we're also quiet. Whereas the rest was loud and didn't seem to care much for the history and the culture of the country, even though that was the biggest component of the entire trip, which we knew beforehand. The group was now basically split in two each time Lakeman was with us, and that wasn't a fun way to travel in a group. But we, aside from Lakeman, still talked to the other people, although Lakewoman didn't interact with us anymore since I told her to stop touching me. The meddler barely talked to us, and if she did, she stopped being annoying and didn't try to advise us or interfere with what we were doing. The counselor also didn't really ask me anything or interact with me anymore, and just interacted with my friend as if he was some translator or something. I think she didn't really know how to communicate with me anymore after the restaurant incident and the revelation that I had autism, and she was probably scared to upset me or something, which is a really odd way to react, and definitely not the way to go if someone has autism. But I was too exhausted by the entire situation. I didn't say anything about it, and just focused on the country and the trip itself. And then we went home. Lakeman said goodbye to us, but not to the rest of the group. The end. My friend and I still have contact with the introverted guy and with Lakeman, who is actually chill if he doesn't have to interact with people he doesn't like, and who have the same feelings about him. And that's it. That's story time. This is probably going to be one of the longest videos I've done in a while, but it's totally worth it. Yeah, that woman totally would have hooked up with you, man. My Belgian friend, she would have totally hooked up with you. I had the same thing happen on a trip. All it took was flirting back, and we hooked up for the rest of the trip. I never saw her again. It was awesome. But totally worth it. And I'm very happy that the lore finally comes full circle. And we now all know the story of our Autistic Belgians trip. Thank you so much for watching. That was a lot of fun. Also, I absolutely agree. Really bullshit that she found out you were autistic and treated you like you were some kind of pariah. It's like, come on, you're autistic. That's it. It's not anything weird. That's just a shit thing to do. Okay, now we're done.